Hello and welcome to Zenith Workouts. I'm Rebecca Libby. Today we're filming a series of short workouts that you can do either independently or put them all together. But the idea is that this series is designed for people that maybe have a history of chronic recurrent low back pain, acute flare-ups spaced out with periods that you relatively feel okay. And combined with stiffness in the hips, particularly in bringing the knee towards the chest, hip flexion, and bringing the thigh away and behind you, hip extension. So we will be focusing on those things. If you fit into that category at all, or you just want to enjoy a good workout, then you can tune in. This is beginner level, right? We're just starting our rehab. And this first video is going to be using the mini ball. If you don't have the mini ball, it's not the end of the world. It's just that with the mini ball under the pelvis, it's more fun. And you just get that nice feedback about whether your pelvis is staying absolutely still. Because the essence of this series that we're about to do is that your spine and your pelvis, your bony pelvis, can stay nice and still, absolutely no movement, while you do movement with the legs. So coming down onto your back. To begin, placing the ball above your tailbone, below your low back. So it's not in the small of your back, it's right behind the pelvis, nice and centered. If you're looking for your neutral pelvis without the ball, you're evaluating, you're looking for those hip pointers and the pubic bone to be in a nice horizontal line. But now that you've brought your pelvis up with the ball, you are gonna see a little bit of a slope where the pubic bone, the hip pointers, and the ribs, they all should live in a fairly nice straight line. Bring the feet close together to start, and the knees close together if you can. And if you have the arms on the mat for this one, that's your sort of true beginner position, because you can use the arms a little bit. Bending the elbows makes it a little bit harder, or raising the arms towards the sky makes it even more. So you can also place the hands on the hips to monitor for any movement if you feel like you can't get a great sense of whether the ball is moving or not. So focusing on the ball, staying nice and still. Beautiful breath in to prepare, and you're breathing. You're relaxing your core as you breathe in, and as you breathe out, you're thinking of your pelvic floor lift and your deep belly drawing in. Nice breath in. Each time you breathe in, you're also thinking about your ribs getting wider. In particular, your very lowest ribs. Try not to breathe into the upper chest. Right? And once you get the rhythm of your breath, 2 or 3 breaths, maybe 4 or 5, whatever it takes today, then begin with a single knee moving out to the side. So your breath in, you're centered, you're nice and relaxed, you're just preparing. And as you breathe out, you're initiating with the pelvic floor lift and the deep belly drawing in, and you're using that to help keep the pelvis still while the right knee goes out to the side and then pulls back in as you breathe in. So that on your next breath out, you can do the left leg and back into the center. And just working at your own pace and remembering that the goal is not to get the knee as far out to the side as possible, as you have flexibility. It's how far can you do it with control, so that if you had a carpenter's level across those hip pointers, the little bubble would stay in the middle, no matter what phase of the movement the knee is at. One hip might be more flexible than the other, right? And that will also limit you. But it's really about eliminating those little micro movements of the ball underneath the pelvis. If you find you're pushing into the arms, just make an effort to try to be a little bit lighter there, or remove the arms from the mat. Because you want this to be a sense of strength in your center, and particularly starting low at your pubic bone and working, that strength up the abdominals, not gripping, or creating tension elsewhere in the body. We're going to make this one the last one with the left leg going out to the side. And you're going to keep your breath going so that on your next exhale, you're bringing one leg up to what we call chair position or tabletop. And I'd like you, because you have stiff hips, to come a little bit beyond, right? Not so much that you move the low back or the pelvis at all, but come to the limit of your hip flexion or your bend in the hip this way. And then release that leg. And you want to be perfectly smooth as you engage the core and switch to the other side. Breathing in to release the leg. Breathing out, pelvic floor lift, deep belly draws in. And so if you didn't have the mini ball at home, or if you don't have the mini ball at home, then you are paying attention to where the pressure of your back of your pelvis is on the mat, and that shouldn't be shifting. But with the ball, it'll tell you, because you'll feel the ball move, it'll tell you whether that pelvis is staying nice and still. Our cheat usually when we bring the knee up is that, instead of keeping that spine nice and still, we allow it to curve. The ball rolls a little bit away from us. So just watch that you are maintaining that lovely spine neutral. It should be comfortable in your low back. You may feel a little bit of limitation as you get to the end of your hip movement. But as long as it's not, dramatic pain, then that's okay, because your goal is to try to increase that hip movement, right? Let's make this one the last one on our left. And I'd like you to hold that left leg up in tabletop or up in chair position. So the knee is right over the hip. The shin is pretty horizontal, And again, hands can be on the mat or elbows can be bent, or as you get more advanced, you can take both arms off the mat. But your goal is now that stillness in the pelvis as you bring the second leg up to tabletop. So you're doing a little bit of isometric with the left leg. Use the same breath. Pelvic floor lift, deep belly draws in lightly. There's nothing that moves except that right leg coming up to chair position and then lowering back down. And we're going to do a repeater on the right leg, each time letting it relax back on the mat so you can sort of train the timing of your deeper core muscles. By letting them relax, you improve the neuromotor pattern of engaging the core before you move the leg, right? And if you're having an off day and you're feeling like as soon as you raise the leg, the abdominals are, bulging towards the ceiling, or, the body shifting because the spine and pelvis are moving, then just unweight the leg. Just take the right leg, engage the core first, and see if you can take like 25 or 50% of the weight out of that foot and put it back down. Like that's sort of your prep movement. You're not actually taking 100% of the weight, but you're working all the same, fundamentals just by taking, 50% of the weight out of the leg. If you're able to take the whole leg up to chair position or up to tabletop, then fine. Good. Make that one the last one with the right. Lower the left. Give a little shake out if you need, because it does get fatiguing in the leg that's up, but that's okay. You're getting some strengthening there. And then bring the right leg up to tabletop when you're ready, making sure that knee pulls in a little bit, to be over the hip or even a tiny bit beyond. Neutral low back and pelvis. On your out breath, pelvic floor lifts, deep belly draws in. Nothing moves as you bring the left leg up to tabletop. And lower it back down. Make sure you relax it, totally put the weight on the mat with that left foot before you bring it up again, right? And if you want, if you're wondering if you're engaging the deep core, if you put your hand on your abdominals and you feel as you bring the leg up, that the abdominals stay nice and flat, that there's no movement there really, then you're probably having a good form or having good form. If you feel the abdominals lifted to the ceiling or hardening and bulging out, then you're likely not having a good coordination or activation of your deeper abdominal muscles that we're looking to control this movement. Okay, so leave that last leg up in tabletop now. You have both legs up in your tabletop or chair position. You're going to keep the toes together here. The hands can be, again, wherever it makes sense. And as you breathe out, I want you to open both knees so that you're coming into like a little froggy position or a little diamond shape. And then as you breathe in, you'll close it back up. Right? This one you can do a little bit faster. You're making sure that the ball still stays nice and still underneath the pelvis. You're working on the symmetry and the timing of the legs, of that hip movement. And if you have one hip that's a little stiffer than the other, that might limit you, right? Like maybe you can only go this far with the right, but the left could keep going. You're just going to make it even because your goal is to keep still on the ball and, yes, maybe increase the right hip flexibility to match the left eventually. Maybe that never happens, but you make small improvements. Good. Hold this last one with the knees open and just see if you can pulse it a tiny bit. Make sure you have the abs engaged still. The low back's comfortable, you're neutral on the ball, and you're just going to press the knees open an extra inch, maybe, or whatever you can. Beautiful. And you should be a little tired in the hip flexors now, and maybe within the hip itself, maybe in the abdominals itself. You're going to take the left knee and just hug it in towards the chest and let the right leg straighten and hang over the ball to open the hip flexor on that side or to lengthen the hip flexors. And then with the left knee, the arms are just, on the shin or below the knee. Elbows are nice and wide, the upper body's relaxed, and you take a nice breath in. And I always give myself a little space there. I always move my thigh a little bit away from my body in that moment, so that as I breathe out, I can draw that knee a little closer in towards my chest. You can simply hold it if you feel that you get a better tissue response that way, that you get an improvement in the stretch or the flexibility. But I love the oscillation. Like my body, my nervous system, whatever, my fascia responds better to easing in and out of a movement. So play around with it and see what works for you. And all the while, as you're drawing this knee in towards the chest, the other one, you might be feeling a nice stretch or opening in that hip flexor. You're targeting two hips with one exercise. And then hold this knee in, bring the right knee up to your chest. I think I'm going to sneeze. And then hold the right knee in as the left leg straightens out over the ball. And you're ideally trying to keep the leg in a nice straight line. Sometimes it will tend to want to rotate and come out to the side. And you can play around with it. You can stretch it that way too. But ideally you'd like to try to keep it straight as you draw it in towards the chest so that your lower leg is in line with your mat, with your spine, with that center line. Once again, you can ease out. You can draw in. If you find that it's very that instead of getting more of a global stretch in the hip, you're feeling a lot of blockage or pinching in the groin, you can take a little rolled up towel, like or something about that in diameter, and you can place it right into the groin and the crease of the hip line, and you can hold it there while you do the stretch. And that sometimes allows the front of the hip to open a little bit and be less pinchy and allow you to get a more comfortable stretch. So you can play around with that. Sometimes that's a great solution for people. Sometimes it doesn't make a difference for them. So give it a go. There we go. So after enjoying that stretch, lower the leg, lift off the ball, And then just as an ending for this one, do a nice imprint and release so that you move from your neutral pelvis where the pubic bone and the hip pointers are in a nice horizontal line. You've got a little space behind your low back in the mat. And just do 3 nice imprint and releases where on your out breath you're drawing the low, the low spine back towards the mat. You're very, very easy in the abdominals here, right? You're imagining that it's more gravity that is just, sort of helping to melt the spine down towards the mat, as opposed to, really tensing in the core or gripping in the bum or pressing into the feet. It's, it's an easy, sort of trying to feel effortless movement. And you're also looking for the head and the neck to stay nice and still, while the low back does that movement. Awesome. All right. See you for the next one. Thanks.